Hey YouTube, Jonathan here at Night Knowledge. Rimworld came out with a big update and its first paid DLC, Royalty, a few weeks ago, and just like State of Decay, I've started playing that again. Rimworld has many different mechanics all working together along with a host of mods that you can make your game bigger and better. And today's video is going to show you my 5 best tips for the game. Let's get started. So we'll be talking about 5 things in this video: gardening, storage zones, room design, research, and taming. In terms of gardening, you'll want to start growing plots of land immediately and have 5 things in particular: rice, potatoes, cotton, hay, and heel root. Rice has a nice short growth time and should be ready for harvest before you've run out of packaged foods, while the potatoes will provide a large enough harvest to be able to store in a future freezer. Use this food source to start cooking simple meals for your community. Although it takes a long time, cotton is important so you can craft replacement clothing for your pawns when the time comes. There will also be random quests in the future that will require you to make large amounts of clothing, so this will be a good source of money and reputation for your other factions. Hay also takes quite a while to grow, but is worth it, because if you have a large stable of tamed herbivores, they'll quickly eat all the grass in your surrounding area and possibly start starving. It's important to set aside 2 zones for your animals: a grazing zone that prohibits the hay growing area and an emergency area. We'll talk about that a bit later in the video. Lastly, with a high enough skill, you'll be able to grow heel root, so you have a mid-game replacement of your starting medicine. It's important for the cotton, hay, and heel root that you find fertile soil areas to grow in. Either look for dark soil spots or use the fertile soil toggle to quickly find the spots, denoted by the bright green area. When it comes to storage zones, it's important to organize your areas for increased efficiency. If you expose your items and materials to the elements outside, they're bound to deteriorate and disappear. The only raw resources that doesn't seem to take damage to the elements are steel and rocks. Everything else should be stored indoors and at the least roofed. Nothing is worse than spending your time growing hay and heel root only to have it disappear in the rain. I understand it's hard to do it at the beginning with limited resources, time, and space, but it'll be easier in the long run to find what you need if you make designed storage areas for weapons, armor, apparel, and fertilized eggs. Room design is really important in Rimworld, in that if it's not properly designed, your pawns will be upset. If they're upset at enough things, they may suffer a mental break, meaning they'll act out. Maybe they'll go on a bender and drink all those beers you're intending to sell, or maybe they'll start a fist fight with other pawns, resulting in 2 people in the hospital. Or, worse yet, you might even have a pyromaniac. After watching some videos and doing some research, when it comes to a bedroom, to not upset your pawns, you want to do the following. You want to have either a 4x4 or a 5x5 room. In each room, you'll have a bed, a dresser, a nightstand, a light, a plant, and preferably a statue. When it comes to the walls, if you have the resources, you can use steel, but it might be more cost efficient to use slate, lime, or granite. Just avoid using wood. When it comes to flooring, carpets is better than stone. Always have extra rooms for prisoners, preferably 2. I've made this mistake before, and by time I had a room ready for the prisoner, they died from bleeding out. You'll want these rooms extra comfortable as well, because the better mood the prisoner is in, the higher the chance that they'll be recruited by your warden. So make sure you include any TVs and assigning good food to be fed to them. The next thing we'll talk about is the design of a freezer. You'll want to set the AC to -5 degrees Celsius. This will prevent food from spoiling. In hotter climates, you can use 2 ACs, but with any more, there are diminishing returns. You'll want to use 2 blocks worth of thickness from the outside to better insulate, and use a square design versus other shapes, as they are less efficient for cooling purposes. One of the key parts to the freezer design is using an airlock system of 2 doors, which will trap the heat and not cause your freezer to become warm. I like having a kitchen adjacent to the freezer with a normal temperature that will keep the pawn happy while not suffering any production speed debuffs. Make sure you provide a seat and set it so that the chef just drops their cooked meal on the ground. By doing both of these things, the chef spends less time hauling both raw resources and cooked meals. It's a good idea, if you intend on making beer or smokeweed joints, to have the brewing area or the crafting spot near the freezer, because both the hops and the smokeweed leaves are stored in the freezer to prevent spoilage. By doing so, your pawns spend also less time having to haul them. Research is a bit overwhelming in the early game, if not the entire game, with such a huge tree. These are my top 3 items that I'd recommend researching: the battery, solar panel, and the auto door. The battery will obviously store unused excess electricity for the times your generators are on the fritz. Use switches like this so you can turn them off when full to avoid the dreaded zits power failure event. Nothing is worse than losing power and then coming under siege by raiders and not being able to power on your turrets. Auto doors are beneficial for your freezer area, so less heat is lost when traveling through them. It'll also save a bit of time for your pawns as well. Be aware though, these do use up components which you'll want to save up for more critical production benches or power plants. The last thing we'll talk about is taming. Taming animals is useful because they can either fight for you, haul things, or produce resources like my llamas producing llama wool. A useful animal to tame, buy, or start the game with is 1 hen and 1 rooster. Left to their own devices, hens will pop out fertilized eggs, and soon your colony will be stocked with an easy food source. If you forget to send them to an emergency area, your chickens can provide a distraction for raiders while your colonists get into defensible positions. I like having 2 area restrictions for my animals: an outside grazing area and an emergency area. The emergency area is typically a small space deep inside my base for when we get attacked, so the animals can be protected instead of shot by raiders or by us accidentally. The outside grazing basically covers an area that excludes the animals from grazing on our growing plants. If unrestricted, animals will eat your plants and you'll have to reseed and start from scratch. So those are my top 5 beginner tips for Rimworld. I hope they helped you out. There is still a ton of ways to make a community more efficient, so let me know in the comments below what are your top tips. Thanks for liking, commenting, and subscribing. Check out the rest of my channel for other videos on Rimworld, video games, board games, and other fun things. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.